The funeral programs still littered Commander Hayes' desk when the beacon signal pierced through the Tactical Operations Center. 3 months too late, someone muttered from behind the communications console. "Dead operatives don't send signals, Rodriguez." The words hung in the recycled air of the bunker, mixing with the hum of servers and the distant rumble of generators that never stopped running. Lieutenant Kira Thorne had been declared killed in action 97 days ago. Hayes remembered the exact count because he had signed the casualty report himself, his signature authorizing the transport of an empty casket back to Dover Air Force Base. The mission had gone dark in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, and satellite imagery showed nothing but scorched earth where her extraction point should have been. No body recovered, no survivors found, just another name added to the memorial wall, and another family left with folded flags and unanswered questions. Before we continue with this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed the kind of determination it takes to survive when everyone else has given up hope. The beacon designation flashed across multiple screens now, amber text cutting through the darkness of the operations center. Echo 779er. Kira's personal identification code, the one embedded in her survival gear and synchronized with Pentagon databases. The signal originated from a location 43 miles northeast of her last known position, deep in Taliban-controlled territory where American forces had not operated since the withdrawal. Sergeant Martinez leaned over the primary communication station, his calloused fingers dancing across keyboards with practiced efficiency. The man had 20 years of experience reading electronic signatures, and his face carried the skepticism of someone who had seen too many false positives and equipment malfunctions. "She's been dead for 3 months, sir. This has to be some kind of equipment error or enemy deception. Maybe they found her gear and figured out how to activate it." Hayes stood behind him, studying the cascading data streams that painted a picture of impossible survival. The signal strength suggested an active transmission, not a passive emergency beacon triggered by impact or separation. Someone was manually activating the device, entering the proper authentication codes, and transmitting on frequencies that required intimate knowledge of current military protocols. The Taliban were resourceful, but they were not sophisticated enough to replicate this level of operational security. The memorial service had concluded just 6 hours earlier. Hayes had delivered the eulogy himself, standing before an assembly of Navy SEALs, Marine Force reconnaissance operators, and CIA personnel who had worked with Kira during her 5-year career in special operations. He had spoken about her dedication, her unconventional methods, and her ability to survive in environments that broke stronger soldiers. The words felt hollow even as he spoke them, because privately, Hayes had always questioned whether Kira possessed the mental toughness required for deep penetration missions. She was too young, too idealistic, and too willing to trust her instincts over established procedures. During training evaluations, senior instructors had noted her tendency to improvise rather than follow doctrine, her preference for minimal equipment loads, and her habit of studying indigenous survival techniques that were not part of standard curriculum. These traits had made her effective in certain situations, but they had also made her unpredictable and difficult to command. Captain Foster emerged from the intelligence section, carrying a tablet loaded with classified briefing materials. His expression suggested someone who had just discovered information that challenged everything he thought he understood about recent operations. "The authentication codes check out, Commander. The signal is definitely coming from Lieutenant Thorne's equipment, and the transmission protocols match her personal encryption keys. Either she's alive, or someone has access to information that should have died with her." The possibility that Kira had survived 3 months in hostile territory without support or communication seemed remote beyond consideration. The region where she had disappeared was controlled by hardline Taliban fighters who had spent decades perfecting guerrilla warfare tactics. American prisoners captured in that area typically survived less than 2 weeks before being executed or traded for propaganda value. A lone female operative would face additional dangers that made long-term survival essentially impossible. Hayes examined the tactical display, showing the beacon's location relative to known enemy positions and supply routes. The signal originated from a valley system that intelligence reports described as heavily fortified and actively patrolled. If Kira was somehow alive and operating in that environment, she had not only survived capture and execution, but had also managed to avoid detection while maintaining access to her electronic equipment. The level of tactical awareness and survival skill required for such an achievement would exceed anything demonstrated by her previous operational history. Martinez continued monitoring the signal, noting fluctuations in transmission strength and frequency that suggested deliberate manipulation rather than automatic broadcasting. Someone is actively operating this equipment, sir. The signal pattern shows intentional modulation, like they're trying to communicate specific information. It's not just an emergency beacon anymore. Someone is trying to talk to us. The implications of active communication from a presumed dead operative created immediate operational complications. If Kira was alive and attempting contact, she represented both an intelligence asset and a rescue priority. If enemy forces had captured her equipment and learned to operate it effectively, they possessed a capability that could compromise ongoing operations throughout the region. Either scenario required immediate response and careful analysis of rapidly changing tactical situations. The signal pulsed again at 14-minute intervals, each transmission containing data packets that made Martinez question everything he thought he knew about electronic warfare. Lieutenant Thorne's beacon was not simply broadcasting a distress call. The device was transmitting compressed intelligence reports, tactical observations, and enemy movement patterns that demonstrated active surveillance capabilities over an extended period. Staff Sergeant Williams approached the communication station with printouts of decoded message fragments, his expression carrying the bewilderment of someone who had spent 12 years in signals intelligence without encountering anything comparable. Sir, these aren't random transmissions. Someone has been conducting systematic reconnaissance for weeks, maybe months. The data includes patrol schedules, supply convoy routes, and defensive positions that match our current intelligence estimates. Either Lieutenant Thorne has been operating independently in hostile territory, or the Taliban has developed surveillance capabilities that exceed our assessment of their technical sophistication. Hayes studied the decoded information, noting the level of detail and tactical awareness that characterized each report. The intelligence described enemy positions with accuracy that would require direct observation and professional military training. Patrol timings were recorded to the minute, supply cache locations were mapped with precise coordinates, and defensive preparations were analyzed with insights that suggested advanced tactical education. This was not information that could be obtained through casual observation or interrogation of capture equipment. The Tactical Operations Center filled with personnel as word spread through the base about the mysterious transmissions. Senior non-commissioned officers gathered around workstations, their conversations creating a low buzz of speculation and disbelief that mixed with the electronic sounds of monitoring equipment. Most expressed skepticism about the possibility that Kira could have survived 97 days in Taliban territory without support or communication. Gunnery Sergeant Peterson voiced what many were thinking. No way she's been alive this whole time without us knowing. The Taliban would have paraded her around for propaganda if they'd captured her alive. And if she'd escaped, she would have made contact months ago. This has to be some kind of elaborate deception operation designed to draw us into an ambush or compromise our communication protocols. Chief Petty Officer Ramirez disagreed, pointing to the authentication codes embedded in each transmission. The encryption sequences check out against Pentagon databases, and the personal identification markers match Lieutenant Thorne's service record exactly. Someone would need access to classified cryptographic materials to fake this level of authentication. If the Taliban captured her alive and forced her to reveal her codes, they would have used that information for immediate tactical advantage, not long-term intelligence gathering. The debate continued as additional transmissions provided more detailed intelligence about enemy operations in the region. Each data packet contained information that would be valuable for planning future operations, but also raise questions about how a single operative could maintain such comprehensive surveillance without detection. The level of tactical discipline and survival expertise required for extended solo operations in hostile territory exceeded anything documented in Kira's service record. Captain Foster returned from the intelligence section with classified assessment reports that painted a more complete picture of the operational environment where the transmissions originated. The region is completely controlled by Taliban forces affiliated with foreign fighters who have no interest in taking prisoners. American personnel captured in that area are typically executed within days of capture. The terrain offers minimal concealment for extended operations, and local populations are actively hostile to Western presence. Survival for more than a few weeks would require extraordinary tactical awareness and indigenous knowledge that takes years to develop. Martinez continued monitoring the signal, noting subtle variations in transmission timing and frequency that suggested intentional communication rather than automated broadcasting. The patterns indicated someone with advanced knowledge of military communication protocols who was deliberately varying the signal characteristics to avoid detection by enemy monitoring equipment. Whoever is operating this device understands electronic warfare principles and is taking active measures to prevent triangulation and interception. The implications of the intelligence being transmitted created immediate operational possibilities and concerns. If the information was accurate, it provided unprecedented insight into enemy operations that could enable highly effective tactical strikes. If the transmissions represented enemy deception operations, responding to them could compromise ongoing missions and expose friendly forces to carefully planned ambushes. Hayes weighed the tactical considerations while examining satellite imagery of the region where the beacon signals originated. The area showed signs of recent activity that matched some of the intelligence being transmitted, suggesting that the observations were current and accurate. Vehicle movements, defensive preparations, and patrol patterns visible in the imagery corresponded with the reported enemy activities, lending credibility to the intelligence being received. The possibility that Kira had not only survived, but had been conducting solo reconnaissance operations for 3 months challenged basic assumptions about individual capabilities and survival limits. Her service record indicated competence in survival training and tactical operations, but nothing that suggested the level of expertise required for extended independent operations in hostile territory. The disconnect between her documented abilities and the demonstrated performance suggested either significant underestimation of her capabilities or access to resources and training that were not reflected in official records. Williams updated the intelligence assessment with each new transmission, building a comprehensive picture of enemy operations that exceeded the quality of information obtained through traditional surveillance methods. The level of detail being provided suggested intimate knowledge of enemy procedures and daily routines that could only be obtained through extended observation from concealed positions. Someone has been watching these people for months, learning their habits, and documenting their activities with professional thoroughness. The beacon's signal strengthened during the next transmission cycle, suggesting movement toward higher ground or improved transmission conditions. The enhanced signal quality allowed for more detailed data recovery and revealed additional layers of intelligence that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of enemy communications and logistics operations. Whoever was transmitting possessed not only survival capabilities, but also analytical skills that enabled extraction of strategic intelligence from tactical observations. Hayes pulled Kira's service record from the classified personnel database, searching for clues that might explain the sophisticated intelligence operations being conducted from deep and hostile territory. The file painted a picture of an unconventional operator whose methods had consistently drawn criticism from senior instructors and commanding officers throughout her 5-year career in special operations. Her initial training evaluations contained numerous comments about unorthodox approaches to standard procedures. Instructor notes from the Naval Special Warfare Basic Training Course described her tendency to improvise equipment solutions and study indigenous survival techniques that were not part of the established curriculum. Lieutenant Thorne demonstrates exceptional aptitude for survival skills, but consistently deviates from approved methods in favor of techniques learned from non-military sources, one evaluation stated. Her preference for minimal equipment loads and unconventional approaches may compromise mission effectiveness in traditional operational environments. Captain Morrison had been her commanding officer during the Advanced Reconnaissance course, and his assessment reflected the skepticism that many senior personnel felt about Kira's unconventional methods. She spent her free time studying primitive hunting techniques, traditional camouflage methods, and indigenous food procurement practices that had no relevance to modern military operations, Morrison had written. While these interests demonstrate intellectual curiosity, they also suggest a lack of focus on established tactical doctrine and approved operational procedures. The pattern continued throughout her advanced training programs. Instructors noted her habit of studying local customs and survival practices from regions where she might be deployed, often spending weeks learning traditional techniques from civilian experts rather than focusing on military-approved methods. Her approach to equipment selection consistently favored simplicity over technological sophistication, choosing basic tools that could be maintained and repaired in field conditions rather than advanced systems that required specialized support. Master Chief Rodriguez remembered Kira's performance during the survival, evasion, resistance, and escape course, where her unconventional approaches had drawn both admiration and concern from instructors. She completed the survival portion using techniques that weren't taught in our curriculum, Rodriguez told Hayes. Instead of following standard shelter construction and food procurement methods, she used primitive techniques that were actually more effective in the training environment. The instructors weren't sure whether to commend her or discipline her for ignoring established procedures. Her deployment history revealed a consistent pattern of successful missions accomplished through methods that differed significantly from planned approaches. After-action reports frequently noted that Lieutenant Thorne had achieved mission objectives while deviating from established procedures and employing techniques that were not part of standard operational doctrine. Her commanding officers praised her results while expressing concern about her reluctance to follow approved methods. Colonel Henderson had supervised Kira during her deployment to Southeast Asia, where she had been tasked with conducting reconnaissance in dense jungle environments. She spent the first 2 weeks of the deployment learning traditional tracking and concealment techniques from local guides rather than relying on technological surveillance methods, Henderson's report stated. While her unconventional approach initially raised concerns about mission compliance, her ability to operate undetected in hostile territory exceeded that of operatives using standard techniques. The intelligence reports coming from the Taliban-controlled region demonstrated the same preference for simplicity and indigenous methods that had characterized Kira's entire career. The surveillance techniques being employed suggested someone who understood how to blend into the local environment and observe enemy activities without relying on advanced technology that could be detected or compromised. Traditional camouflage and concealment methods were clearly being used to maintain observation posts that had remained undetected for months. Chief Warrant Officer Sullivan had trained with Kira during language immersion programs where she had demonstrated unusual dedication to understanding local customs and survival practices. She didn't just learn the languages, Sullivan explained to Hayes. She studied traditional hunting methods, primitive tool construction, and indigenous food preparation techniques. Most operatives focus on tactical communication and operational terminology, but she wanted to understand how local populations survived in harsh environments using traditional methods. Her psychological evaluations revealed someone who was intellectually curious about alternative approaches to problem solving and who possessed exceptional confidence in her ability to adapt to challenging environments. Lieutenant Thorne demonstrates high levels of self-reliance and adaptability, but also shows resistance to authority when she believes alternative methods would be more effective, one assessment noted. Her willingness to challenge established procedures may create command difficulties in traditional operational structures. The pattern of unconventional thinking extended to her equipment preferences and mission planning approaches. While other operatives requested advanced surveillance equipment and technological support systems, Kira consistently chose minimal equipment loads that emphasized basic tools and traditional survival gear. Her mission planning focused on understanding local terrain, weather patterns, and indigenous survival resources rather than relying on technological solutions and external support systems. Sergeant Major Adams recalled Kira's approach to training exercises where she consistently outperformed other operatives while using techniques that were not part of standard curriculum. She would disappear into terrain that other operatives found impossible to navigate and emerge days later with intelligence that exceeded what we could obtain using conventional surveillance methods, Adams said. Her ability to survive and operate independently was remarkable, but her methods were so different from standard procedures that we weren't sure how to evaluate her performance. The transmissions continuing to arrive from hostile territory reflected the same independence and unconventional thinking that had characterized Kira's entire military career. Someone was conducting sophisticated intelligence operations using methods that emphasized adaptation, improvisation, and integration with the local environment rather than reliance on advanced technology and external support. The level of tactical awareness being demonstrated suggested that years of studying traditional survival and concealment techniques had prepared someone for exactly the type of situation that conventional training could not address. Hayes closed the service record file with growing respect for capabilities that had been consistently underestimated by the military bureaucracy. The woman whose funeral they had attended 6 hours earlier had spent her entire career preparing for exactly the type of survival situation that everyone assumed was impossible. The briefing room filled with the subdued tension that preceded high-risk operations as Hayes assembled the extraction team. 6 Navy SEALs sat around the polished conference table, their expressions reflecting the skepticism that came with years of experience in impossible situations. The mission parameters defied conventional wisdom about survival limits and operational feasibility, creating doubt that extended beyond normal pre-mission concerns. Lieutenant Commander Blake reviewed the tactical assessment while shaking his head slowly. 3 months in Taliban territory without support or communication. Sir, with all due respect, if Lieutenant Thorne was captured alive, she would have been executed or traded for propaganda value within weeks. The fact that we're receiving intelligence transmissions doesn't necessarily mean she's the one sending them. This could be an elaborate trap designed to draw American forces into a carefully planned ambush. Senior Chief Martinez spread satellite imagery across the table, pointing to terrain features that illustrated the operational challenges they would face. The insertion point is 43 miles from the beacon location, all of it through hostile territory with active patrols and defensive positions. Even if we assume the intelligence being transmitted is accurate, reaching the signal source will require us to move through areas where Taliban forces have been operating freely for months. They know that terrain better than we do. Petty Officer Williams studied the decoded intelligence reports with the analytical focus of someone trying to reconcile impossible circumstances with observable facts. These intelligence summaries show tactical awareness that would require months of observation and professional military training. The level of detail about enemy operations, defensive positions, and patrol patterns exceeds what we typically obtain through conventional surveillance methods. Either Lieutenant Thorne has been conducting the most successful solo reconnaissance operation in military history, or we're looking at enemy deception that demonstrates capabilities we didn't know they possessed. Hayes understood their skepticism because he shared it. The possibility that Kira had survived capture, execution, and 3 months of independent operations in hostile territory challenged basic assumptions about individual limits and survival capabilities. Her service record showed competence and unconventional thinking, but nothing that suggested the extraordinary tactical awareness and survival expertise being demonstrated through the intelligence transmissions. Chief Petty Officer Thompson voiced the concern that everyone was thinking. Sir, if this is really Lieutenant Thorne, and she's been alive for 3 months conducting reconnaissance operations, why didn't she make contact earlier? Why wait until now to activate her beacon? The timing seems suspicious, especially considering that our operational tempo in the region has increased significantly over the past 2 weeks. This could be enemy intelligence trying to exploit our increased activity. The mission planning continued despite the questions that couldn't be answered through available intelligence. Extraction operations required precise coordination and detailed knowledge of terrain, enemy positions, and escape routes that would be essential regardless of whether they were rescuing a survivor or walking into an ambush. The team studied approach routes, contingency plans, and communication protocols that would enable rapid adaptation to changing tactical situations. Sergeant Collins examined the equipment list with particular attention to survival gear and medical supplies that might be needed for someone who had endured months of captivity or independent survival. If Lieutenant Thorne is alive and has been operating independently, she's going to need immediate medical attention and nutritional support. 3 months in that environment would take a severe physical toll, even for someone with advanced survival training. We need to be prepared for someone who might be barely alive. The intelligence being transmitted continued to demonstrate tactical awareness that exceeded normal expectations for solo operations. Enemy patrol schedules were documented with precision that suggested months of careful observation. Supply convoy routes were mapped with details that indicated intimate knowledge of logistics operations, and defensive positions were analyzed with insights that reflected professional military education. Someone was conducting surveillance operations that would normally require a full intelligence team. Lieutenant Davis raised operational security concerns that extended beyond the immediate extraction mission. If the Taliban has captured Lieutenant Thorne's equipment and learned to operate it effectively, they now possess communication capabilities that could compromise ongoing operations throughout the region. Every transmission we receive could be providing them with information about our communication protocols, response procedures, and tactical capabilities. We might be giving them more intelligence than we're receiving. Hayes weighed the tactical considerations while examining updated satellite imagery that showed recent changes in enemy positions and activity patterns. Some of the defensive preparations visible in the photographs corresponded with intelligence being transmitted from the beacon location, lending credibility to the reported observations. The correlation between transmitted intelligence and observable enemy activities suggested that someone was conducting active surveillance from concealed positions. The extraction timeline created additional pressure because intelligence reports indicated that Taliban forces were conducting increased patrols in the region where the beacon signals originated. Enemy activity levels had escalated significantly over the past week, possibly in response to the electronic transmissions that they might have detected. Delayed response could result in the loss of whoever was operating the beacon, whether it was Kira or enemy personnel conducting deception operations. Master Chief Rodriguez outlined contingency procedures for various scenarios they might encounter during the extraction operation. If we find Lieutenant Thorne alive, she's going to require immediate medical evacuation and extensive debriefing about her survival techniques and intelligence observations. If we discover that Taliban forces have been operating her equipment, we need to recover or destroy the device to prevent further compromise of our communication systems. Either way, this mission is going to provide answers to questions that have been troubling us for months. The team completed mission planning with the understanding that they were preparing for an operation that challenged conventional assumptions about survival, tactical capabilities, and enemy sophistication. Whether they were rescuing an exceptional survivor or responding to an elaborate deception, the mission would require tactical flexibility and readiness to adapt to circumstances that exceeded normal operational parameters. Blake summarized the team's collective skepticism as they prepared to depart. "Sir, I've been conducting special operations for 15 years, and I've never encountered anything comparable to this situation. The possibility that Lieutenant Thorne survived 3 months of independent operations in hostile territory while conducting professional-level reconnaissance exceeds anything I've seen documented in military history. But the intelligence being transmitted is too sophisticated to dismiss, and we can't ignore the possibility that someone is out there who needs our help." The helicopter insertion occurred under cover of darkness, with the extraction team deploying 43 miles from the beacon location into terrain that intelligence reports described as actively hostile. Blake led the six-man SEAL team through rocky valleys and steep ridgelines that provided concealment from enemy observation while creating natural obstacles that slowed their movement toward the signal source. Martinez monitored the beacon transmissions through portable communication equipment that received updated intelligence reports every 14 minutes. The data continued to demonstrate tactical awareness that challenged the team's assumptions about solo survival capabilities. Whoever is operating that beacon has been conducting systematic surveillance for months, Martinez whispered into his radio headset. The intelligence about enemy patrol routes and defensive positions is more detailed than anything we've obtained through conventional reconnaissance. The terrain matched descriptions provided in the transmitted intelligence reports, lending credibility to the surveillance observations being received. Enemy positions were located exactly where the intelligence indicated, patrol timings corresponded with transmitted schedules, and defensive preparations matched the detailed descriptions being broadcast from the beacon location. Someone had been watching Taliban operations with professional thoroughness and accuracy that exceeded normal expectations. Williams used night vision equipment to scan the surrounding ridgelines while expressing continued skepticism about the mission parameters. "Sir, I've been tracking electronic signatures for 12 years, and I've never encountered anything like these transmissions." The level of tactical detail being provided suggests someone with advanced military training who has been conducting surveillance operations for an extended period. But the possibility that Lieutenant Thorne survived 3 months in this environment while gathering this intelligence still seems impossible. The team moved through valleys that showed signs of recent enemy activity, discovering camouflage positions and supply caches that matched locations described in the beacon transmissions. The correlation between transmitted intelligence and observable evidence suggested that someone was conducting active reconnaissance from concealed observation posts that had remained undetected by Taliban forces for months. Thompson examined tracks and equipment traces that indicated sophisticated concealment techniques had been employed to avoid detection. Someone has been operating in this area using traditional camouflage and evasion methods that don't rely on advanced technology, Thompson reported. The concealment techniques are professional quality, but they're based on indigenous methods rather than standard military procedures. This matches Lieutenant Thorne's preference for unconventional approaches. Blake studied the tactical situation while monitoring radio communications for signs of enemy response to their presence. The Taliban forces in this region are experienced fighters who know the terrain and have been operating freely for months. If Lieutenant Thorne has really been conducting surveillance operations here without being detected, she's demonstrated survival and concealment capabilities that exceed anything documented in special operations training records. The beacon's signal strengthened as they approached the transmission source, providing more detailed intelligence about enemy activities and defensive preparations. Each update contained information that would be valuable for planning future operations, but also raised questions about how a single operative could maintain such comprehensive surveillance without external support or advanced equipment. Collins monitored the surrounding terrain for signs of Taliban patrols while questioning the operational feasibility of extended solo operations. "Sir, the logistics of surviving 3 months in hostile territory without resupply or communication support would require extraordinary preparation and indigenous knowledge. Even someone with advanced survival training would face challenges that would normally be insurmountable without external assistance." The intelligence being transmitted continued to demonstrate intimate knowledge of enemy procedures and daily routines that could only be obtained through extended observation from multiple concealed positions. Patrol schedules were documented to the minute. Supply convoy routes were mapped with precise coordinates, and defensive positions were analyzed with insights that reflected professional tactical education. Davis examined evidence of recent activity in areas where the transmitted intelligence indicated ongoing surveillance operations. Someone has been using traditional hunting blinds and natural concealment to observe enemy activities without being detected, Davis reported. The observation posts are constructed using indigenous techniques that blend perfectly with the natural environment. This level of camouflage expertise would require years of study and practice. The team advanced through terrain that became increasingly dangerous as they approached the beacon location. Taliban forces maintained regular patrols throughout the region, and the risk of detection increased with each mile traveled toward the signal source. The possibility that they were walking into an ambush remained a constant concern that influenced every tactical decision and movement choice. Rodriguez coordinated the advance while analyzing the tactical implications of the intelligence being received. If Lieutenant Thorne has been alive and conducting reconnaissance for 3 months, she's gathered intelligence that could change our understanding of enemy capabilities and intentions in this region. But if this is enemy deception, we're providing them with information about our response procedures and tactical capabilities that could compromise future operations. The beacon transmissions continued to provide detailed updates about enemy movements and activities that corresponded with observable evidence throughout the area. Someone was maintaining active surveillance from positions that allowed comprehensive observation of Taliban operations while remaining completely undetected by forces that had been searching for American personnel for months. Blake assessed the tactical situation as they neared the final approach to the beacon location. In 15 years of special operations, I've never encountered a survival situation that lasted more than a few weeks without external support. The possibility that someone has been conducting independent operations for 3 months while gathering professional quality intelligence challenges everything we understand about individual capabilities and survival limits. But the evidence we're seeing suggests that someone with extraordinary skills has been operating in this environment far longer than anyone thought possible. The team prepared for final approach to the beacon location with the understanding that they were about to encounter either the most remarkable survival achievement in military history or the most sophisticated deception operation they had ever faced. The first observation post revealed itself only after Williams nearly stepped through what appeared to be solid ground. The camouflage position had been constructed using traditional techniques that created perfect concealment while providing comprehensive surveillance coverage of the valley below. Blake examined the hide with growing amazement at the sophistication of construction and positioning that had enabled months of undetected observation. "This isn't military standard camouflage," Blake whispered as he studied the intricate weaving of natural materials that rendered the position invisible from more than 10 feet away. Someone used indigenous techniques to create a hide that's more effective than anything we learned in advanced reconnaissance training. The construction methods are professional quality, but they're based on traditional hunting and tracking knowledge rather than modern military doctrine. Martinez discovered evidence of extended occupation that indicated someone had been using the position for weeks or months while maintaining strict operational security. Food preparation areas were concealed beneath multiple layers of camouflage. Waste disposal had been managed to avoid detection, and sleeping areas showed signs of regular use without leaving traces that could be discovered by enemy patrols. The tactical advantages of the position became apparent as the team studied the surveillance coverage it provided. From this location, someone could observe enemy patrol routes, monitor supply, convoy movements, and track defensive preparations throughout the entire valley system. The intelligence being transmitted from the beacon matched perfectly with what could be observed from his concealed vantage point. Thompson found additional evidence that challenged his assumptions about individual survival capabilities. Water collection systems had been constructed using traditional techniques that captured and purified rainwater without requiring advanced equipment or external supplies. Food procurement evidence indicated someone had been living off the land using indigenous hunting and gathering methods that left minimal traces of activity. Someone has been conducting a masterclass in primitive survival while gathering professional quality intelligence, Thompson reported. The techniques being employed here are more sophisticated than anything taught in standard military survival courses. This level of expertise would require years of study and practice with traditional methods that most operatives never encounter. Collins discovered a second observation post positioned to provide overlapping surveillance coverage with the first location. The tactical coordination between positions demonstrated systematic planning and professional understanding of reconnaissance principles that exceeded normal expectations for solo operations. Someone had been conducting comprehensive surveillance using multiple concealed positions that provided redundant intelligence gathering capabilities. The construction quality of the second hide revealed the same attention to detail and indigenous techniques that characterized the first position. Natural materials had been woven together to create camouflage that was virtually undetectable while providing excellent protection from weather and observation. The level of craftsmanship indicated extensive knowledge of traditional construction methods that were rarely encountered in modern military operations. Davis examined communication equipment traces that indicated someone had been maintaining regular contact with external sources while avoiding detection by enemy monitoring systems. Radio procedures showed professional understanding of communication security and frequency management that prevented Taliban forces from triangulating transmission sources or intercepting intelligence broadcasts. The beacon transmissions continue to provide real-time updates about enemy activities that corresponded exactly with what the team could observe from the concealed positions. Someone was maintaining active surveillance while broadcasting intelligence that demonstrated tactical awareness and professional military training. The correlation between transmitted intelligence and observable facts eliminated most possibilities except that Lieutenant Thorne had somehow survived and adapted to environmental conditions that should have been impossible to endure. Rodriguez discovered a third observation post that completed a surveillance network covering the entire operational area. The positioning and construction of all three hides demonstrated systematic planning and tactical understanding that reflected advanced military education and extensive knowledge of traditional survival techniques. Someone had created a comprehensive intelligence gathering system using indigenous methods that modern military doctrine rarely addressed. Williams monitored the latest beacon transmission while comparing the intelligence with evidence discovered throughout the observation network. The surveillance system we're looking at represents months of professional work by someone with extraordinary survival skills and tactical awareness. The quality of intelligence being gathered exceeds what we typically obtain through conventional reconnaissance methods using advanced technology and multiple personnel. Blake coordinated the team movement while reassessing his assumptions about the mission parameters. 15 years of special operations experience had not prepared him for evidence of survival and tactical capabilities that exceeded documented limits of individual performance. If Lieutenant Thorne created this surveillance network and has been operating independently for 3 months, she's accomplished something that challenges everything we understand about solo operations in hostile territory. The observation posts revealed additional evidence of extended occupation that indicated someone had been living in the area for months while maintaining operational security that prevented detection by enemy forces. Personal items were minimal and carefully concealed, but they showed signs of regular use and maintenance that suggested ongoing habitation rather than temporary occupation. Thompson found evidence of medical self-care that indicated someone had been treating injuries and maintaining health without external assistance. Traditional medicinal techniques had been employed using indigenous plants and materials that demonstrated extensive knowledge of primitive healthcare methods. The level of expertise required for self-sufficient medical care in hostile environments exceeded standard military medical training. The tactical situation became clearer as the team studied the complete surveillance network and recognized the extraordinary capabilities that had been demonstrated. Someone had survived 3 months in Taliban-controlled territory while conducting professional quality reconnaissance operations using traditional survival techniques that modern military training rarely addressed. The achievement represented a combination of survival expertise, tactical awareness, and adaptability that exceeded documented examples of individual performance under extreme conditions. Martinez updated the mission assessment while monitoring continued beacon transmissions that provided ongoing intelligence about enemy activities. Sir, the evidence we're discovering indicates that Lieutenant Thorne has not only survived impossible conditions, but has been conducting the most successful solo reconnaissance operation in military history. The surveillance network she's created using indigenous techniques provides intelligence capabilities that exceed what we can achieve through conventional methods using advanced technology and multiple personnel. The radio crackled with static as Martinez attempted the first direct communication with the beacon source, using authentication codes that would verify the identity of whoever was operating the transmission equipment. Blake positioned the team in defensive formation around the primary observation post while monitoring surrounding terrain for signs of enemy response to their radio activity. Echo 779er, this is Rescue Alpha 6. Authenticate with personal verification code and respond if you copy this transmission. Martinez spoke in measured tones that carried across the tactical frequency with professional clarity, while the entire team waited for a response that would either confirm their most optimistic hopes or reveal the sophisticated deception they had been anticipating. The silence stretched for 30 seconds before a voice emerged from the static with words that sent shock waves through every member of the extraction team. Rescue Alpha 6. This is Echo 779er. Authentication Papa Lima 77 Delta November. It's good to hear friendly voices again. The transmission ended with a brief burst of static, leaving 6 experienced special operations personnel staring at their communication equipment with expressions of complete disbelief. Blake grabbed the radio handset with hands that trembled slightly as the implications of confirmed contact with a presumed dead operative began to register. Lieutenant Thorne, this is Lieutenant Commander Blake. Are you injured? What is your current status? Do you require immediate medical evacuation? The questions tumbled out in rapid succession as years of training in personnel recovery operations took precedence over the amazement that clouded his tactical thinking. Kira's voice returned with calm professionalism that contrasted sharply with the extraordinary circumstances of her survival. Commander Blake, I am mobile and operational. Minor injuries from the initial incident have healed. I do not require immediate medical evacuation, but I have been gathering intelligence on enemy operations that will be valuable for future mission planning. I can provide detailed briefings on Taliban capabilities, patrol schedules, and defensive positions throughout this region. The tactical implications of active communication with a survivor who claimed to be gathering intelligence created immediate operational possibilities and security concerns. Williams monitored enemy radio frequencies for signs that Taliban forces had detected their transmission activity, while Thompson scanned surrounding ridgelines for visual indication of hostile response to their presence in the area. Martinez established secure communication protocols while struggling to reconcile the professional competence being demonstrated with the impossible survival circumstances that Kira's presence represented. Lieutenant Thorne, how have you maintained operational security for 3 months without external support or communication? The intelligence you've been transmitting suggests surveillance capabilities that would normally require a full reconnaissance team. Kira's response revealed tactical awareness and survival expertise that exceeded anything documented in her service record. I've been using traditional concealment and tracking techniques learned from indigenous sources, combined with standard reconnaissance procedures. The enemy forces here operate on predictable schedules that allowed me to establish observation routines without being detected. Their patrol patterns and defensive preparations follow conventional guidelines that create opportunities for sustained surveillance. Collins examined the surrounding terrain while listening to Kira describe survival techniques that demonstrated extraordinary adaptation to environmental conditions that should have been lethal within weeks of her initial disappearance. The level of tactical discipline and indigenous knowledge being described suggested capabilities that had been significantly underestimated by military assessment procedures. Blake coordinated extraction planning while attempting to understand the scope of intelligence operations that Kira claimed to have been conducting independently. Lieutenant Thorne, The reconnaissance reports you've been transmitting contain tactical details that exceed our current understanding of enemy capabilities in this region. How extensive is your knowledge of Taliban operations and defensive positions? The response demonstrated analytical capabilities and situational awareness that transformed the extraction mission into an intelligence recovery operation with strategic implications. I have detailed information on supply routes, communication procedures, leadership structures, and defensive preparations for a 40-mile radius around this position. I've been documenting patrol schedules, equipment inventories, and personnel rotations that provide comprehensive intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. Rodriguez monitored the tactical situation while recognizing that Kira's survival and intelligence gathering activities represented achievements that challenged conventional understanding of individual capabilities under extreme conditions. The professional competence being demonstrated through radio communication indicated someone who had not only survived impossible circumstances, but had thrived in conditions that would normally break experienced operators within weeks. Davis established perimeter security while processing the implications of contact with an operative who had been presumed dead for 3 months, but was now claiming to possess intelligence that could change strategic planning for the entire region. The transformation from memorial service to intelligence recovery operation created operational complications that exceeded normal extraction procedures. Thompson coordinated communication security while monitoring enemy frequencies for signs of hostile response to their radio activity. The possibility that Taliban forces might detect their transmissions and converge on their position created immediate tactical concerns that influenced every aspect of the extraction operation. Williams updated the tactical assessment while acknowledging that direct communication with Kira had confirmed the extraordinary survival achievement that physical evidence had been suggesting. Lieutenant Thorne's professional competence and tactical awareness exceeded expectations based on her service record and suggested capabilities that had been systematically underestimated by military evaluation procedures. Martinez established extraction coordination procedures while recognizing that the intelligence Kira claimed to possess would require extensive debriefing and analysis that extended far beyond normal personnel recovery operations. The scope of reconnaissance activities being described suggested that her survival had produced strategic intelligence assets that could influence operational planning throughout the region. Blake coordinated the final approach to Kira's position while acknowledging that the extraction team was about to recover not just a survivor, but an intelligence asset whose achievements challenged fundamental assumptions about individual capabilities and survival limits. The mission had evolved from personnel recovery to strategic intelligence extraction, with implications that extended throughout special operations planning procedures. Kira emerged from concealment that had been so effective that Blake found himself staring at empty terrain until she moved, revealing traditional camouflage techniques that rendered her virtually invisible until she chose to be seen. Her appearance shocked the extraction team, not because she looked like someone who had endured 3 months of survival in hostile territory, but because she appeared healthy, alert, and tactically prepared for continued operations. "Commander Blake," she said with calm professionalism that contrasted sharply with the extraordinary circumstances of her survival. "I have comprehensive intelligence on enemy operations that will require detailed briefing, but immediate priorities include updated information on Taliban patrol schedules and defensive preparations that affect your extraction route." Martinez stared at Kira with the expression of someone whose fundamental assumptions about survival limits had been shattered by observable evidence. "Lieutenant Thorne, you look like someone who's been conducting normal operations rather than surviving in hostile territory without support. How did you maintain your physical condition and operational readiness for 3 months?" Kira's response demonstrated tactical awareness and survival expertise that exceeded anything the team had encountered in their combined decades of special operations experience. "I've been living off the land using traditional hunting and gathering techniques, while maintaining physical fitness through daily surveillance activities. The indigenous methods I studied before deployment provided everything needed for sustained operations without external supplies or advanced equipment. Blake examined Kira's equipment and noted the minimal gear load that emphasized basic tools and traditional survival items rather than advanced technology. Her weapons showed signs of regular maintenance and care. Her clothing had been repaired using field-expedient methods, and her overall appearance suggested someone who had adapted successfully to environmental conditions that should have been lethal. Williams monitored communication security while struggling to reconcile Kira's professional competence with the impossible survival scenario she represented. Lieutenant Thorne, the intelligence you've been transmitting contains tactical details that exceed our current assessment of enemy capabilities. What specific information have you gathered that we need to know immediately? Kira's briefing revealed intelligence assets that transformed the extraction mission into a strategic information recovery operation with regional implications. Taliban forces in this area are preparing for major operations involving foreign fighters and advanced equipment that your intelligence assessments haven't detected. I have documented evidence of weapons caches, communication networks, and operational planning that indicates capabilities beyond current estimates. Thompson coordinated perimeter security while listening to intelligence revelations that challenged existing understanding of enemy strength and intentions in the region. The scope of surveillance activities that Kira described suggested months of professional reconnaissance work that had produced strategic intelligence exceeding what conventional methods could obtain. Collins examined the detailed maps and documentation that Kira had created using traditional materials and techniques. Her hand-drawn intelligence products showed tactical awareness and analytical capabilities that reflected advanced military training combined with indigenous knowledge that enabled sustained operations in hostile environments. Davis updated the tactical situation assessment while recognizing that Kira's intelligence gathering activities had produced information that could influence operational planning throughout the theater. The detailed enemy assessments she provided exceeded the quality of intelligence normally obtained through technological surveillance and multiple personnel assets. Rodriguez coordinated extraction procedures while acknowledging that the team was recovering not just a survivor, but a strategic intelligence resource whose achievements challenged conventional understanding of individual capabilities. The professional competence Kira demonstrated suggested that her survival had been accompanied by tactical activities that exceeded normal expectations for solo operations. Blake studied the comprehensive intelligence documentation that Kira had maintained throughout her survival period, noting the systematic approach to data collection and analysis that characterized professional reconnaissance operations. Lieutenant Thorne, the scope of intelligence you've gathered represents months of work that would normally require a full team with advanced equipment and external support. Kira's explanation revealed survival and tactical capabilities that had enabled not just endurance, but active intelligence gathering operations that produce strategic assets. I established routine surveillance schedules that allowed comprehensive observation of enemy activities while maintaining operational security through traditional concealment techniques. The patrol patterns and defensive procedures here are predictable enough to enable sustained reconnaissance without detection. Martinez monitored enemy communication frequencies while processing the implications of intelligence revelations that exceeded current assessments of Taliban capabilities in the region. The detailed information Kira provided about enemy operations suggested that her survival period had produced strategic intelligence that could influence planning for future operations throughout the area. Williams coordinated communication security while recognizing that Kira's intelligence gathering activities represented achievements that challenged fundamental assumptions about individual performance under extreme conditions. The professional quality of reconnaissance work she had conducted while surviving impossible circumstances exceeded documented examples of solo operations in hostile territory. Thompson examined evidence of the systematic approach to intelligence collection that Kira had maintained throughout her survival period, noting the analytical thoroughness that characterized her surveillance activities. The documentation and tactical assessments she had created using primitive materials demonstrated professional competence that exceeded expectations based on her service record. Collins updated extraction planning while acknowledging that the mission had evolved from personnel recovery to strategic intelligence extraction, with implications extending throughout regional operational planning. The scope of reconnaissance activities Kira had conducted represented tactical achievements that exceeded normal expectations for individual capabilities. Blake coordinated the final extraction procedures while recognizing that Kira's survival and intelligence gathering activities had produced strategic assets that would require extensive analysis and debriefing. Her achievements challenged conventional understanding of survival limits and demonstrated capabilities that had been systematically underestimated by military assessment procedures. The extraction route that Kira recommended defied conventional tactical wisdom, but demonstrated intimate knowledge of enemy patrol patterns and terrain features that the SEAL team had not detected during their approach. She led them through valleys and ridgelines that provided concealment from observation while avoiding areas where Taliban forces maintained regular surveillance activities. Blake followed Kira's lead while marveling at her understanding of micro-terrain features that created natural concealment corridors through areas that appeared completely exposed to enemy observation. Lieutenant Thorne, how did you identify these movement routes? Our intelligence assessments indicated that this terrain provided minimal concealment opportunities for large unit movement. Kira's response revealed tactical awareness that exceeded anything documented in her service record or demonstrated during previous operations. I've been studying enemy patrol patterns and observation procedures for 3 months while mapping terrain features that provide concealment from their surveillance methods. The Taliban forces here rely on predictable observation points that create gaps in their coverage if you understand their tactical procedures. Martinez monitored communication security while following movement techniques that Kira employed to avoid detection by enemy forces that had been operating in the area for years. Her knowledge of concealment routes and timing procedures enabled the team to move through hostile territory without triggering defensive responses that should have been automatic given their presence in Taliban-controlled areas. Thompson examined the tactical advantages of routes that Kira selected while recognizing that her understanding of enemy capabilities exceeded current intelligence assessments. The movement corridors she identified provided natural concealment that conventional reconnaissance had not detected, suggesting months of detailed observation and analysis of terrain features and enemy procedures. Collins coordinated rear security while acknowledging that Kira's tactical leadership had transformed the extraction operation from a high-risk penetration mission into a controlled movement through thoroughly mapped terrain. Her understanding of enemy surveillance limitations and patrol schedules enabled tactical movements that would have been impossible without comprehensive intelligence preparation. Davis monitored surrounding terrain while following navigation procedures that demonstrated Kira's systematic approach to mapping enemy capabilities and defensive preparations. The routes she selected avoided observation points and patrol areas that conventional intelligence had not identified, suggesting surveillance activities that exceeded normal reconnaissance capabilities. Rodriguez examined evidence of the detailed terrain analysis that Kira had conducted while surviving in the area, noting the professional thoroughness that characterized her tactical preparations. Her knowledge of concealment opportunities and enemy limitations reflected months of systematic observation and analysis that enabled tactical movements through supposedly impassable terrain. Williams coordinated communication procedures while recognizing that Kira's tactical awareness exceeded expectations based on her previous operational history. The movement techniques she employed demonstrated understanding of enemy capabilities and terrain features that reflected advanced tactical education combined with months of practical application under extreme conditions. Blake assessed the tactical situation while acknowledging that Kira's leadership had enabled movement through hostile territory that should have been impossible without extensive preparation and detailed intelligence support. Her knowledge of enemy procedures and terrain characteristics exceeded what conventional reconnaissance could provide, suggesting capabilities that had been systematically underestimated. Kira demonstrated additional tactical expertise by identifying enemy surveillance equipment and communication installations that conventional intelligence had not detected. Taliban forces in this region use traditional observation methods, combined with basic electronic surveillance, that creates predictable coverage patterns. Understanding their procedures enables tactical movements that avoid detection while gathering intelligence on their capabilities and intentions. The team discovered evidence of sophisticated enemy preparations that Kira had been documenting throughout her survival period, including defensive positions, supply caches, and communication networks that exceeded current intelligence assessments of Taliban capabilities in the region. Her systematic surveillance activities had produced tactical intelligence that could influence operational planning throughout the theater. Martinez updated the extraction timeline while monitoring enemy frequencies for signs of hostile response to their movement through areas that should have triggered immediate defensive reactions. Kira's knowledge of enemy communication procedures and response patterns enabled the team to avoid detection while moving through territory that Taliban forces considered secure. Thompson coordinated perimeter security while following concealment techniques that Kira employed to avoid observation by enemy forces that maintained regular patrols throughout the region. Her understanding of traditional camouflage and movement procedures enabled tactical operations that exceeded normal expectations for movement through hostile territory. Collins examined the comprehensive intelligence documentation that Kira had maintained while conducting surveillance operations, noting the analytical thoroughness that characterized her approach to tactical assessment and terrain analysis. Her reconnaissance activities had produced strategic intelligence that exceeded what conventional methods could obtain using advanced technology and multiple personnel. Davis monitored tactical communications while recognizing that Kira's survival and intelligence gathering activities represented achievements that challenged fundamental assumptions about individual capabilities under extreme conditions. The professional competence she demonstrated exceeded documented examples of solo operations in hostile territory. Williams coordinated extraction security while acknowledging that Kira's tactical leadership had transformed their understanding of survival limits and operational capabilities. Her achievements during 3 months of independent operations exceeded anything encountered in their combined decades of special operations experience. Blake updated mission status while recognizing that the extraction operation had evolved into intelligence recovery with strategic implications extending throughout regional operational planning. Kira's survival and reconnaissance activities had produced tactical assets that would require extensive analysis and could influence future mission planning procedures throughout the theater of operations. The Taliban patrol appeared on the ridgeline ahead without warning, forcing the extraction team into immediate defensive positions as Blake calculated tactical options that offered minimal chances of avoiding contact with superior enemy forces. 6 heavily armed fighters moved with the confidence of soldiers operating in familiar territory, their positioning and movement patterns suggesting professional military training and intimate knowledge of local terrain features. Kira motioned for the team to remain concealed while she assessed the tactical situation with calm precision that contrasted sharply with the immediate danger they faced. "Those are foreign fighters attached to the local Taliban cell," she whispered with certainty that indicated months of observation and analysis. "They conduct patrol sweeps every 48 hours using routes that avoid the concealment positions I've been monitoring. Their communication procedures follow conventional patterns that create tactical opportunities if you understand their operational limitations." Blake watched Kira analyze enemy movements with professional competence that exceeded anything demonstrated during her previous operations. "Lieutenant Thorne, how do you recommend we avoid contact with superior forces in terrain that provides minimal concealment opportunities?" The tactical situation appeared hopeless, with enemy forces positioned to detect any movement toward the extraction point. Kira's response revealed tactical awareness that had been developed through months of practical application under extreme conditions. The patrol follows predictable timing schedules that allow tactical movement through gaps in their coverage. Taliban fighters rely on traditional observation methods that create blind spots in their surveillance, if you understand their positioning procedures. We can reach the extraction point by following routes they don't monitor during shift changes. Martinez monitored enemy radio communications while struggling to reconcile Kira's confident tactical assessment with the overwhelming disadvantages they faced against superior forces operating in familiar territory. The enemy fighters maintained professional communication, discipline, and movement procedures that suggested advanced training and extensive combat experience in the region. Thompson coordinated defensive positions while acknowledging that Kira's knowledge of enemy procedures represented their only chance of avoiding contact that would result in casualties and mission failure. Her understanding of Taliban operational patterns enabled tactical options that conventional assessment procedures had not identified during mission planning. Collins examined the enemy formation while recognizing that Kira's analytical capabilities exceeded expectations based on her service record and previous operational history. The detailed knowledge she demonstrated about enemy capabilities and procedures reflected months of systematic observation and professional analysis that had produced tactical intelligence exceeding normal reconnaissance standards. Davis monitored surrounding terrain while following Kira's assessment of concealment opportunities that enabled movement through areas that appeared completely exposed to enemy observation. Her knowledge of microterrain features and enemy surveillance limitations created tactical possibilities that conventional intelligence had not detected during extraction planning. Rodriguez coordinated team movement while acknowledging that Kira's tactical leadership had become essential for mission success in circumstances that exceeded normal operational parameters. Her understanding of enemy procedures and terrain characteristics enabled tactical decisions that could determine whether the extraction succeeded or resulted in catastrophic contact with superior forces. Williams maintained communication security while monitoring enemy frequencies for signs of coordination between the patrol and other Taliban units operating in the region. Kira's knowledge of enemy communication procedures enabled the team to anticipate tactical responses and avoid detection during critical movement phases. Blake assessed tactical options while recognizing that Kira's survival and intelligence gathering activities had produced capabilities that exceeded documented examples of individual performance under extreme conditions. Her professional competence in analyzing enemy procedures and terrain features represented achievements that challenged conventional understanding of solo operations in hostile territory. The enemy patrol adjusted their formation in response to environmental factors that Kira had predicted based on months of observation and analysis. Their movement patterns followed procedures that she had documented throughout her survival period, enabling the extraction team to anticipate tactical decisions and maintain concealment during critical phases of the operation. Martinez updated the tactical assessment while monitoring enemy communications that confirmed Kira's analysis of Taliban operational procedures and response patterns. Her understanding of enemy capabilities exceeded current intelligence estimates and enabled tactical movements that should have been impossible given the overwhelming advantages that hostile forces possessed in familiar territory. Thompson coordinated extraction security while following concealment techniques that Kira recommended based on her systematic study of enemy surveillance methods and response procedures. Her knowledge of Taliban operational limitations created tactical opportunities that conventional reconnaissance had not identified during mission planning phases. Collins examined evidence of the comprehensive enemy analysis that Kira had conducted while surviving in hostile territory, noting the professional thoroughness that characterized her tactical assessments and operational preparations. Her surveillance activities had produced intelligence that enabled tactical decisions exceeding normal expectations for movement through hostile territory. Davis monitored perimeter security while acknowledging that Kira's tactical expertise had transformed the extraction operation from probable disaster into controlled movement through thoroughly analyzed terrain. Her understanding of enemy procedures and capabilities represented achievements that exceeded anything encountered in conventional special operations experience. Williams coordinated communication procedures while recognizing that Kira's knowledge of enemy operational patterns had enabled tactical movements that defied conventional assessment of mission feasibility. Her analytical capabilities and survival expertise had produced strategic advantages that could determine mission success in circumstances that should have resulted in catastrophic contact with superior enemy forces operating in familiar territory. The enemy patrol shifted formation exactly as Kira had predicted, creating a 12-minute window during their shift change procedure that enabled tactical movement through terrain that appeared completely exposed to observation. Blake followed her lead through concealment routes that defied conventional tactical wisdom, while marveling at the systematic analysis that had enabled such precise understanding of enemy operational patterns. Martinez monitored enemy communications while recognizing that Kira's knowledge of Taliban radio procedures enabled the team to anticipate tactical responses and avoid detection during critical movement phases. Her understanding of enemy communication discipline exceeded current intelligence assessments and provided tactical advantages that conventional reconnaissance had not identified during extraction planning. Thompson coordinated rear security while following movement techniques that Kira had developed through months of practical application under extreme survival conditions. Her knowledge of concealment opportunities and timing procedures enabled tactical operations that exceeded normal expectations for movement through hostile territory controlled by experienced enemy forces. Collins examined the sophisticated camouflage techniques that Kira employed to maintain concealment while directing team movement through areas that Taliban forces considered secure. Her understanding of traditional concealment methods, combined with systematic analysis of enemy surveillance procedures, created tactical capabilities that exceeded anything documented in special operations training records. Davis monitored surrounding terrain while acknowledging that Kira's tactical leadership had transformed the extraction operation from probable disaster into controlled movement through thoroughly analyzed enemy territory. Her professional competence under extreme pressure exceeded expectations based on her service record and demonstrated capabilities that had been systematically underestimated by military assessment procedures. The extraction point appeared ahead as Kira guided the team through the final approach using routes that avoided detection by enemy forces that maintained regular patrols throughout the region. Her knowledge of Taliban operational procedures and terrain characteristics enabled tactical movements that should have been impossible without extensive preparation and detailed intelligence support from multiple assets. Rodriguez coordinated extraction security while recognizing that Kira's survival and intelligence gathering activities represented achievements that challenged fundamental assumptions about individual capabilities under extreme conditions. The professional quality of tactical leadership she demonstrated exceeded documented examples of solo operations in hostile territory and suggested capabilities that conventional training had not adequately developed. Williams maintained communication protocols while monitoring enemy frequencies for signs of hostile response to their movement through areas that should have triggered immediate defensive reactions from Taliban forces. Kira's understanding of enemy communication procedures and response patterns enabled the team to avoid detection while moving through territory that hostile forces considered completely secure. Blake assessed the tactical situation while acknowledging that Kira's expertise had enabled mission success in circumstances that exceeded normal operational parameters. Her knowledge of enemy capabilities and procedures represented months of systematic observation and analysis that had produced strategic intelligence exceeding what conventional methods could obtain using advanced technology and multiple personnel. The helicopter extraction zone required final approach through terrain that provided minimal concealment from enemy observation, creating tactical challenges that demanded precise timing and comprehensive understanding of Taliban surveillance procedures. Kira analyzed the approach route, while coordinating team movement through gaps in enemy coverage that she had identified during months of detailed reconnaissance. Martinez updated extraction coordination while monitoring enemy communications that confirmed Kira's analysis of Taliban operational procedures and response patterns. Her understanding of enemy capabilities enabled tactical decisions that defied conventional assessment of mission feasibility and demonstrated analytical skills that exceeded normal reconnaissance standards. Thompson examined evidence of the comprehensive terrain analysis that Kira had conducted while surviving in hostile territory, noting the professional thoroughness that characterized her tactical preparations and operational planning. Her surveillance activities had produced intelligence that enabled extraction operations through supposedly impassable enemy territory. Collins coordinated perimeter security while following concealment techniques that Kira recommended based on her systematic study of enemy surveillance methods and response procedures. Her knowledge of Taliban operational limitations created tactical opportunities that conventional intelligence had not identified during mission planning phases. Davis monitored tactical communications while recognizing that Kira's professional competence exceeded anything encountered during his decade of special operations experience. Her achievements during 3 months of independent operations challenged conventional understanding of survival limits and demonstrated capabilities that have been systematically underestimated by military evaluation procedures. Williams coordinated extraction procedures while acknowledging that Kira's tactical leadership had enabled mission success that should have been impossible given the overwhelming advantages that enemy forces possessed in familiar territory. Her understanding of Taliban procedures and capabilities represented achievements that exceeded documented examples of individual performance under extreme conditions. Blake updated mission status while recognizing that the extraction operation had revealed capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about individual limits and survival expertise. Kira's achievements during 3 months of independent operations exceeded anything encountered in conventional special operations experience and demonstrated tactical competence that had been systematically underestimated by assessment procedures. The helicopter approached the extraction zone as Kira coordinated final security procedures while maintaining tactical awareness that enabled mission completion without enemy contact. Her knowledge of Taliban response patterns and communication procedures had enabled extraction operations through hostile territory that conventional assessment indicated should have been impossible to penetrate without extensive preparation and multiple asset support. The helicopter lifted off from hostile territory as Blake stared at Kira with the expression of someone whose fundamental understanding of human capabilities had been permanently altered by witnessing achievements that exceeded every documented example of individual survival and tactical performance. 3 months ago, we attended your funeral. Today, you've demonstrated survival and intelligence gathering capabilities that challenge everything we thought we knew about operational limits. Hayes waited in the Tactical Operations Center as the extraction team returned with intelligence assets that would require comprehensive analysis and strategic assessment. The memorial programs, still scattered across his desk, served as stark reminders of assumptions that had been shattered by evidence of survival and tactical achievement that exceeded conventional understanding of individual capabilities under extreme conditions. Martinez delivered the initial debriefing while struggling to articulate the scope of tactical competence that Kira had demonstrated throughout the extraction operation. Sir, Lieutenant Thorne has been conducting professional quality reconnaissance operations for 3 months while surviving in conditions that should have been lethal within weeks. Her knowledge of enemy capabilities, patrol procedures, and defensive preparations exceeds our current intelligence assessments for the entire region. The intelligence documentation that Kira had maintained using primitive materials and traditional techniques filled multiple briefing folders with tactical assessments that demonstrated analytical capabilities exceeding normal reconnaissance standards. Her systematic approach to surveillance and enemy analysis had produced strategic intelligence that conventional methods could not obtain using advanced technology and multiple personnel assets. Thompson examined the comprehensive terrain maps that Kira had created through months of detailed observation, noting the professional quality of tactical analysis that characterized her reconnaissance activities. Her understanding of enemy procedures and capabilities represented achievements that challenged fundamental assumptions about individual performance under extreme survival conditions. Collins reviewed the detailed enemy assessments that Kira had documented throughout her survival period, recognizing that her analytical thoroughness exceeded expectations based on her service record and previous operational history. The scope of intelligence gathering she had conducted while surviving impossible circumstances represented tactical achievements that redefined understanding of solo operations in hostile territory. Rodriguez coordinated the intelligence analysis procedures while acknowledging that Kira's survival and reconnaissance activities had produced strategic assets requiring extensive evaluation and assessment. Her achievements during 3 months of independent operations exceeded anything encountered in decades of special operations experience and demonstrated capabilities that conventional training had not adequately developed. Williams updated the tactical assessment while recognizing that Kira's professional competence challenged basic assumptions about survival limits and individual capabilities under extreme conditions. The quality of intelligence she had gathered while enduring circumstances that should have been lethal represented achievements that exceeded documented examples of tactical performance in hostile environments. Blake submitted his after-action report while acknowledging that the extraction operation had revealed capabilities that redefined understanding of individual limits and survival expertise. Lieutenant Thorne has demonstrated tactical competence and survival capabilities that exceed anything documented in military history. Her achievements during 3 months of independent operations represent a combination of analytical skills, survival expertise, and tactical awareness that challenges conventional assessment of human performance under extreme conditions. Hayes examined the comprehensive intelligence briefing that Kira provided during her initial debriefing, noting the strategic value of reconnaissance activities that had been conducted while surviving in hostile territory. Her professional competence and analytical thoroughness exceeded expectations based on her service record and suggested capabilities that had been systematically underestimated by military evaluation procedures. The Tactical Operations Center filled with senior personnel as word spread throughout the base about intelligence assets that had been recovered through the extraction operation. Conversations reflected amazement and professional respect for achievements that challenged fundamental assumptions about survival limits and individual capabilities under extreme operational conditions. Martinez coordinated the comprehensive intelligence analysis while recognizing that Kira's reconnaissance activities had produced strategic assets with implications extending throughout regional operational planning. Her systematic approach to surveillance and enemy assessment represented tactical achievements that exceeded normal expectations for individual performance in hostile environments. If you connected with this story of extraordinary survival and tactical excellence, drop a comment about what impressed you most about Kira's achievement, or share if you've known someone who showed unexpected resilience and capability when everyone else had given up hope. Thompson updated personnel records while acknowledging that Kira's achievements required fundamental reassessment of individual capabilities and survival expertise. Her performance during 3 months of independent operations exceeded documented examples of tactical competence and demonstrated analytical skills that conventional training had not adequately recognized or developed. Collins examined the strategic implications of intelligence assets that had been produced through Kira's survival and reconnaissance activities, noting the professional quality of tactical analysis that characterized her approach to enemy assessment and operational planning. Her achievements represented a combination of survival expertise and analytical capabilities that redefined understanding of individual performance under extreme conditions. Blake concluded his assessment while recognizing that the extraction operation had recovered not just a survivor, but a strategic intelligence asset whose achievements challenged conventional understanding of human capabilities. Lieutenant Thorne's survival and tactical performance represent achievements that exceed anything encountered in special operations experience and demonstrate capabilities that conventional assessment procedures had systematically underestimated throughout her military career.